Cool. Yeah, so my name's Andy, and I want to talk about how we have, in a very short amount of time, had to learn how to onboard people in a very strange way. So just a bit about FOOTASYLUM. We're on the high street. We have over 70 stores. We also have an online presence, and we also have a mobile app as well. But I want to start really by just reminding everyone that this is not normal, and it isn't working from home. You know, it's surviving. And I found a really good quote by Scott Hanselman. You know, people are overwhelmed, afraid, stressed. There's a background pressure. You know, this isn't a problem you can fix with a new webcam or a podcasting mic. So it really resonated with us because we've had to deal with a lot of this over the last couple of weeks. So a little bit of context first. So we've got several multidisciplinary product teams. So digital teams made up of developers, QAs, DevOps, product owners, delivery managers, in a format similar to places like Corp Digital and GDS. We've got over 60 people in IT. And we've actually had 5 new starters in the last 5 weeks. So we've had to learn quite a lot very fast. And it was terrible timing for a lot of those people to be joining a new company. So I'm just going to split this up into 3 different parts. Beforehand, the first week, and this temporary normal that we find ourselves in. So beforehand, you know, somebody applies, they get the job, when you've got a waiting period, which is normally isn't too bad. You know, it's normally maybe a month, 3 months, for example. But the problem we have now is 3 months is a long time, especially if people are remote. They're not going to be able to come into the office and meet people. They're not going to be able to have the same interactions they would previously. So what we started to do, and we found it really useful, is sending a welcome present. So before somebody joins, we give them a slight insight into the company, the culture, you know, get them a gift card so they'll go on the website. You know, we'll encourage them to download the app. We'll get them a couple of books the team recommends. And it's really good, you know, it's from the team, it is personal, and everyone likes a present, which is really good. So an example of this, of what we've done in the last few weeks, we've started to send up books. So the DevOps Handbook and the Phoenix Project, you know, the team picks the book, it goes out to them. But what we've really found is really important now more than ever is to really have a proper starters process that's codified. So previously, you know, it was a really good leavers process, brilliant. But when new people start, it's usually the first day they walk around with a laptop trying to get admin privileges or get a license key. We can't really do that remote. So we really had to make sure we had a script that people could follow. And then moving on to how to actually get to know the team before they're part of it. You know, what we've used over the last couple of weeks and found really useful is really utilizing Slack's guest account feature. You know, we can dial them into a retro, we can share what's going on, and they're enabled to kind of like get an insight into the team. We can pick the channels, and then when they actually properly join, we just make them a full user. But it's really good to get people into the team. And another thing we found really useful is when we're trying to onboard remote people now, in the weeks leading up, we'll start to send week notes. So the week notes are really what the team's been working on, you know, what the team has learned in the last week. And it's a way to share updates across the business. When we'll send these PDFs out to people and they can start to understand the work that they're going to be doing. And the feedback I've had is that people really like that context that they get given. There's a really good website as well. So it's World of Week Notes. So it's lots of companies, lots of digital companies as well. They'll put their week notes on there and you can kind of see what other companies are doing. Really worth having a look down because a lot of it is to do with coronavirus, you know, and how people have figured out how to work remotely so quickly. Another real key point is making sure that people get kitted out properly. We're pretty good at FOOTASYLUM in terms of this. And we found there's a bit of a delay at the moment for some companies getting kits in and stuff like that, but we've got a bit of a surplus. And on the last day before everyone went remote, loads of people were taking stuff home just in case they had to ship anything out. But it's really important to make sure people get the right kit. And it's not just a laptop as well, it's monitors, it's keyboards, it's mice, the things that people probably might not have available. And, you know, obviously working remote short term, people haven't probably thought about a desk and things like that. So anything you can do to help is, you know, obviously really well received. And obviously you get this kit back for the most part. And what we used to do when we actually had an office before all of this is we have weekly updates. But what's really important is now more than ever is that people understand when somebody's due to start. You know, as soon as this offer goes to somebody, make sure everyone's aware. They know what day somebody's starting, and it's everyone's responsibility to kind of get the team up and running. And what we also found out is a few of the people who were joining and kind of new to software engineering, so we need to make sure that we gave them a schedule before they join. We give them the time and space to learn. We set them up with things like Treehouse and Pluralsight, so they can actually start learning. We'll create them a plan. So they, in their own time, can start to look at it, and then when they start, they at least know some of the technologies that we're using. So I want to start really with the first week because I mean, this is really important anyway, but doubly so when it's somebody who is just joined. So what we need to do, and what we found really useful, is to kind of give them this shared context. You know, they need to understand exactly what we're trying to do, you know, who we're doing it for, you know, what have we learned in the process of developing software over the last few years, and really what does success look like. You know, it's very easy when you're in an office environment to look at whiteboards and ask questions, but when you're remote, you really have to have a lot of knowledge. You really have to understand what the team's trying to do. And a lot of that comes down to situational awareness. So what we have is a team plan, you know, who works in what team, you know, and what their Slack, kind of the Slack name is as well. So people can know who to go to straight away, you know, to ask questions, which they otherwise wouldn't have been able to do. Another real key concept that, again, I think it's companies like GDS have really pioneered this, is this idea of show, don't tell. And rather than blitzing people with ridiculous diagrams when they first join, especially when it's remote, they're not going to have all these whiteboards and everything everywhere. You know, this is intimidating for anybody. And we found that this is probably the wrong approach when somebody's joining. You know, if they don't understand the architecture, you know, draw the problem. You know, here's what we've done so far. Build it up bit by bit and link it in and give people an opportunity to learn and kind of ask questions and poke holes and things before they kind of have this horrible diagram in front of them. And what we've also really needed to do recently is make sure that there's team buddies. It's very easy for people to kind of get lost or feel like they can't ask questions. But what we've started to do is everybody, when they're joining remotely, will have a team buddy, someone on the team, somebody who's usually quite senior, somebody who can help them through that first few weeks and help them navigate all the different logins and accounts and everything that they need, because they aren't going to be able to walk over to IT support like they would do in an office. And if it's one thing people take away from this, I think it's that there's no water cooler. You know, you're not going to have people going to kitchens and meeting and, you know, having those informal conversations. You know, you have to build it. And as a development manager, I found that my job really has been just connecting people and making sure that we're working in the open. You know, creating Slack channels that anyone can join that are public, related to each project we're working on. By having these public channels, it enables anyone to join, and the conversations and the questions are shared in the open, rather than what we've previously found is it's private channels where people ask, you know, questions here and there. But you know, we need to make sure we don't have silos. It's really important. So working in the open, making sure we have public channels that everyone can join, and even if they just want to view it for a couple of days and drop out, it's really good to have. Especially when people are joining, you know, they're onboarding, they can kind of get a timeline of what's happened in the last few weeks. What I've also started to do as well is I've opened Slack calls. So what we'll do is all day we'll have Slack calls available. People can drop in and drop out, even if they're not actually working on that team. So maybe a product owner who from a different team who is on a break, they'll join us as a team. You know, they get to talk to people, they get to actually kind of see what the people are working on, they get to hear other voices. And what we've also tried to do is help new starters by involving them with social things that we're trying to do. So make it really easy for people to kind of get to know other people on the teams. So for example, we did have a competition, scavenger hunt a couple of days ago, things like this, you know, where there's a winner, you know, just things that make it easy for people to kind of understand who's who and, you know, have a bit of fun in the process. Then what we really need to do, and what we've found in the last few weeks, we've had to codify a lot of the stuff that was taken for granted, a lot of that knowledge that's in people's head, and actually write it down. And it's simple things like living documentation, you know, the way that the team works and the norms of that team, core values, you know, what time they have stand-ups, you know, what the team does in terms of, you know, how the team pairs up on work, or what kind of development principles they follow and things like that. You know, these are all taken for granted when you work in an office. So onboarding new people remotely, we'll give them this in advance. They can go on the wiki, they can ask questions, and it gives people real insight into how the team works. So they're not on day one having to learn loads of different things. They can kind of slowly be fed information. So a few examples of what we do in terms of team norms is things like headphones for everyone on Slack calls. For any new starters, we'll make sure we give them, you know, they have headsets. You know, video on is really important. You know, seeing people's faces when you're remote, especially when you're new, when you're joining. Regular check-ins throughout the day, and reducing the long-term goals as well. If we make it daily goals, it's a lot easier for a new starter to understand what we're doing. And you know, we've got shorter priorities. We aren't planning months in advance because we know it's not really worth doing at the minute because things change on a daily basis. And you have to really be the icebreaker as well. We found this is really important. Things like, you know, you have to do the introductions between people because there is no water cooler, you know, and you have to make sure that people meet up who are doing similar things. So, you know, real good example of this is a community of practice. It's a term that has been around for a while and a few companies use it. But the idea is that you have people who you bring together who have a diverse group of experiences, but they're doing the same thing. You know, you have your QAs, you have your DevOps people, you have your software engineers, your product owners, your delivery managers. And it's a really good way of getting those people together. And when a new starter joins, we encourage them from day one to join this community of practice. And it might just be spending 10 minutes talking about an agile way of working, or a new task framework or things like that. What we found is it's really useful for new starters to sit with people and spend time with people who do the same job as they do, especially if it's something that's quite a specific role within a team, like a delivery manager. They're the only delivery manager on that team. So when in a remote experience, they're actually going to get time to spend with the delivery managers. So this really gives them that key thing. So it's what you do on the day-to-day is your kind of program, and then it's how you do it is the community of practice. And there's a really, really good book by Emily Webber on this, what I really recommend people get. And it's really about how you can connect people. And we found it so beneficial for new starters because they aren't having to ask all these questions about how we work. They kind of get it through osmosis from spending time with people who do the same job. And what's really important as well is to keep checking in, especially as a manager. You have to be the person that badgers people, because anything you can do to help people is really useful at this point in time. And this isn't working from home, it's surviving during a pandemic, working from home. So you need to make sure that people are happy, healthy, and by keep checking in with them, it's really it really does help us. See, but you come to this kind of week one retro, which we do, and we really want open and honest feedback, and it can be pretty brutal. So the first time we did this, the first new starter remotely, we didn't have an itinerary on the first day. I just completely missed off sending it and hadn't realised because nobody was telling me, and I didn't have HR, on my shoulder. So we've had to learn through retrospectives and getting better and continually improving on how we work. And it comes down to being receptive to suggestions. When people are saying what isn't working, you have to react to it. And you won't get it right straight away. So this kind of temporary normal that we find ourselves in, what we've really found is that Teams and Slack are your best friends at the minute. Usually, it's a strange way of working, having this kind of instant, almost text messaging communication. When you're in an office, it can be quite distracting, but when you're remote, it really does help people to be together and teams to work together. We've found that we're doing a lot less emailing when we're remote. We will just chat with people. Whereas sometimes it would be quite annoying to get messages from people. But one of our team norms is that it's okay not to reply straight away to text messages on Slack and Teams, but it's a really good way of bringing people together if they need to be together. And that can be screen sharing. It can be the demos that we do on a Friday. We'll actually stream them on Microsoft Teams because it's a really good built-in way of kind of doing events. So if we're showing any important news, we can trigger an event, somebody can share the screen and everyone can join it, and it's a real seamless way of working. So these are really good tools, and we found it's really helped us to stay connected to people. And what we've also realized over the last couple of weeks is if you've got new starters, you really have to give them the chance to kind of to learn, to understand the history of the team and what we've been working on. There's products like Miro, which have been really useful to us. We've had this shared whiteboard where every team will put bits of their diagrams on what they're working on the same board. And when we'll take a new starter around this, we'll show them what other teams are working on. And even if they only pick up certain keywords, like, the user in Azure, or that, we've got test-driven development in this team, it creates a shared understanding. And those are the key things that people need when they're starting remote working. And what we also do is we've started a mob program, which is something that we haven't really done before, but we've kind of got better and better at it over the last couple of months. And now, being remote, it's given us an opportunity for new starters to drop into a programming session. They can drive for a bit on the keyboard, but if they want, they can just watch the other team members doing some work and ask questions. And Visual Studio Code is a really good built-in kind of code editor where you can actually have multiple people editing code at the same time. So a new starter can come in, ask questions, look through the code base, and actually see what people are doing in real time. So again, a really good way to collaborate anyway, but especially for a new starter coming in, they don't have to be working in isolation. They can work as a mob. So really, how do you know if you've done a good job? So what we try to do, and something that we measure ourselves on as managers, is that we want people to mob on day one. So mobbing is different to pair programming, whereas it's normally a pair of people, somebody driving and somebody, kind of watching, and then they switch. the mob programming really enables us to remotely onboard new people, but also actually kind of, you can understand the different roles that are going on. We might have a QA and a product owner and a delivery manager with the new developer. And even though the new developer is driving, they can ask questions, they can go through the code base, and it becomes more of an interactive session. So you've got mobbing on day one, you've got committing code in week one. And I appreciate that this is more towards development, but it's the same thing. You want people to have work committed in week one, especially remotely. It's very easy for people. There's no difference in terms of delivering work. I mean, actually speaking at the all hands in month one. So let's say we have an all hands every week. This is an example of Microsoft Teams using the kind of the streaming feature. And what we want to do is get new people to speak, to share, what they've been working on and share their experience. And so that's a real goal for us as a manager, that in that first 4 weeks, we have them mobbing, we have them committing code, and actually showing the rest of the team what they've done. So there's a few things to remember that we found really useful. And one of them is this really great poster from GDS. We're quite lucky at FOOTASYLUM because we have offices in Manchester City Centre to actually share the same building as Co-op Digital. And a lot of people from Co-op Digital used to work at GDS. So we see these posters around quite a lot when we speak to them. And it's really useful because as a new starter, we like to point them towards this. And it's okay to say you don't know. It's okay to have quiet days, and it's okay to prefer tea and have a messy desk. No one knows when you're working from home anyway. But this is a way of working that isn't normal, so we have to make sure we constantly remind people that they shouldn't feel like this is normal ways of working. There's also a really good web app by some of the people from Co-op Digital. You can refresh it, you get a different quote every time. We're in lockdown, we're working from home. It's okay to plan your day around food. And what's really important as well is to get your one-to-ones in as soon as possible. In advance, the week before people start remotely, I will spend some time with them, just have a quick call, just to make sure that they're ready, that they've got everything that they need, but then keep those one-to-ones in. One of the most important things I've found as a manager is not to move one-to-ones. Move everything else, keep those one-to-ones in so you can have time with people. They can bring an agenda if they want, but it really gives you time to kind of understand what people are going through, what they need. And it's simple things as well. So I had a one-to-one earlier today and found out that somebody didn't have a monitor. So we got a monitor shipped out to them. It's stuff like that. Anything that you can do to help people in this climate is really important. And it's also really good to set short-term objectives. You can actually help people by just setting up a weekly meeting. It's 20 minutes. Both grab a coffee and you can sit in front of the computer and just talk about how they're getting on and anything you can do to help them. And also what we find is sharing stories of failure. It really helps new people. You need to gain trust straight away. What we found is we'll just talk about what we've done, what we've learned, what's worked, what hasn't worked. And it really has helped. And if you're a new starter, you're not scared of people because you know that they're in a similar path to you. They've had problems, and especially with junior developers, you can run through some of the famous incidents where you've maybe, you've broken a server and took down a live website. But more often than not, it comes down to over communicating to onboard people, right? We found, how did you find your first mobbing session? I'm just going for lunch now. How would you like to join? Would you like to join the show and tell? And really over communicating the statuses that you show on Slack and Teams. You can say when you're not available. You can say when you're at your desk or when you're away from your desk. And it really helps new people to understand to go for lunch at the same time as other people, because they're not going to have that kind of way of informally knowing when everyone's going for lunch. You have to kind of prompt people a little bit and make sure people actually take a lunch, not at the desk. And people leave work at a reasonable time and go spend time with their friends or family or whoever they're living with at the minute. A couple of final things that I found really useful. So the remote book, Office Not Required, is by the two founders of Basecamp. Really interesting book about remote working, and I really suggest it's something that people find and read. It's a relatively cheap book, but it's really good. Another really good resource is the Hotjar developer website. So it's about remote working for the most part of the minute. They talk a lot about onboarding new people. Really good read, and there's lots of good tips. And I've took some stuff away from this as well. And they really help with onboarding new people across different types of companies. It's not just development. But the main thing I want to kind of leave you with really is that the unit of delivery is the team. So this is kind of a comment that came from a post-it note from GDS. But it really is explaining that there's no real individuals in a team. It's a team delivery. The team is responsible for delivering value, not the individual. And the new starter needs to understand that when they're starting remotely, and they might have kids, they might only be able to work 4 days or 4 hours a day. it's not important. What's important is the team works together and delivers. So it's everyone's responsibility, really, at the end of the day, to onboard new people. And that's me.